Okay, so moving into the equipment space now. Big barn, Fraser. Fraser and I actually have family that know each other back in Matamata, so what a small world. We've been chatting offline. Thanks for reaching out, Fraser. Hi Jamie, I have a query for you regarding water when in the high country and drinking water straight from mountain streams and the risks associated with waterborne bacteria. It would be bloody disastrous to get a vomiting diarrhea bug when hunting, or any time really. I always used to drink out of mountain streams in New Zealand with no ill effects. Totally agree. But these days there seems to be lots of talk about filtering water. Do you fill your water containers straight out of the rivers and creeks in the Victorian high country, and how much water do you carry? I'm planning a backpack hunt in Victoria and I want to plan the water part of the trip as best I can. Any ideas would be much appreciated. Love watching all of your hunting adventures, mate. Hats off to you carrying all that filming gear as well as a rifle pack, etc. You've put together some brilliant footage. Well, thank you, Fraser. I think I carry way too much stuff, but I'm glad you enjoy it. In terms of filling up with water, I totally agree. New Zealand, never filtered water in New Zealand. Always just drunk out of streams. And up until May 2018, this year, I had always just drunk straight out of the high country streams in Victoria without ever catching a bug. This year in May though, it was the first time, and I didn't show it on camera. I videoed a few updates where I was really struggling, but I just decided to take it out. It was just going to distract from the film, but I was really struggling. I had very violent diarrhea. I wasn't vomiting. Little did I know, Dirk actually, who was hunting with me on that trip too, also had very bad diarrhea, but we just didn't share it with each other. We kept that private until the last day, where we'd both got over it by that stage, well, at least the worst part of it, and we were sort of just jokingly talking about it and didn't realise that we both had it. But I think we both got that from the water. We put it down at first, well I did anyway, to some food that I'd been eating, and I thought maybe the egg mix in the freeze dry was off, and Dirk thought the same, but I don't think that was the case now. I do think that was water. And what am I doing about it now? Well, I'm using one of those Sawyer's filters now, and I'm going to take a little small chlorine tablet and iodine tablet in future just to add to the water, just in case. And at night time, so during the daytime I'll do that to the water, but at night time I'll just boil the water. And yeah, that threw me in terms of how much water we take. So it depends on where we are and what time of the year it is, but if it's in the winter time I don't really worry too much about water, because usually there's going to be snow everywhere, or there's water coursing through the streams and rivers down low, and even part way up catchments. So the winter time, during the actual day, I might carry just a litre of water in a bladder and just fill it up at each stream on the way. Adding now, I will add a tablet or filter it. Up high, up in the tops during the colder months, again there's plenty of snow, so we just boil that at night time, get the bladders filled up so that they're ready to run the next day. And I usually take one whole bladder plus a drink bottle, so I'll probably take in about 5 litres of containers that I could use if I want to. Very rarely will I fill them all up, but that's because I don't usually hunt in the hot parts of the year. Now in May was the first time I'd hunted at the sort of end, I guess, of a summertime, and it had been a dry summer, so this May trip, it was really dry, and we actually were limited to water right down the river system. And we didn't climb up high, but had we climbed up high to the top, where I actually do think we should have gone to, where the deer probably were more, we would have had to carry the water up with us, and we would have needed to carry all water that we could fit into our containers and bladders, which would have been about 5 litres, and I don't think that would have lasted long in that hot, dry period in May. So I think water is a massive issue. I saw a really interesting idea from Bolt Action Productions, Steve Robinson, where he had a small PVC pipe that he'd stabbed into the side of a hill where he saw a soak spot which didn't really have water trickling. You could just tell that there was a soak spot in the soil because there was a green, vibrant grass growing there and it was soggy underfoot, but not running water that you could fill up a bladder from. And he stuck this into the hill and just let gravity feed down off this small PVC sort of hose tubing, and I thought, what a great idea, and I want to try that as well, because then you might be able to find water much higher up a slope rather than dropping several hundred metres, and sometimes maybe up to 500 or 600 metres down to a creek. So water is a big issue, and I do think, just to be on the safe side, have a filter system or take some chlorine tablets and iodine tablets, which are cheap and might make your water taste funny, but maybe add some electrolytes to it or some sort of a sugary drink that's going to also give you a lift in energy, although momentarily. Okay, so in terms of the last part of your question, that you're planning a backpack hunt into Victoria and you want to plan the water part the best that you can, I would even take in pre-cooked food or pre-prepared food like muesli bars or food that you're not going to need water to add to it, because you want to drink that water rather than have it added to your food. And that's what I would do again during those drier, hotter periods where water is scarce and you've got to drop a long way down, because at those times of the year I'd probably want to be hunting a bit higher up. Okay, thanks for your question, Fraser. Aussie hunting life. As a fellow YouTube video maker, what camera gear do you use, what editing software do you use, and how much of what you film makes it into your final videos? Alright, so the camera gear that I use, well, I'll start with the camera that you're looking at now. It's a Canon 5D Mark II, and I've got really good quality lenses, the L series Canon lenses, so I've got a few of those, 24 to 70mm, which is my sort of all-round around camp, following the people in the bush, capturing sort of wide angle landscapes, and then I've also got the 70 to 200mm L series lens, which is a very heavy, big, cumbersome lens, but it's a very good quality lens. I've taken that on a few hunts, but I won't take it backpacking on a long trip. It's just such a big, bulky lens, but that takes amazing portraits, anything up close. It's got the ability to create, you know, depth of field, blur, which is, I think, is quite cool. It makes it hard focusing, and I've not got the manual focusing skill down pat yet. I've sometimes focused the wrong direction and realised that it's getting blurrier instead of clearer. But that's the camera that I love to play around with. It's very bulky though, and so sometimes you feel a little bit restricted with carrying that around and capturing moments. I also use a Sony AX FDR or FDR AX53, which is a Sony 4K resolution handy cam, and that's just got I think it's got an optical zoom that runs out to about 22 optical. I also use GoPros, and the GoPros, so the Sony, I use that for putting on a tripod and zooming in and getting close-up footage. It's also got time-lapse, I can do time-lapses, and it's 4K, so if I want to film something that I can then crop 4 times, it still gives me HD definition or 1080 definition, whereas the Canon camera is only 1080, it doesn't go any higher than that. I also use 2 GoPros, the GoPro Hero 5 and the GoPro Session 4. They're just kind of like action cams that I use. I find the audio on them not the best, so now I tend to just use those cameras and I drop the audio away and I just use it just for fillers. I also use the Samsung phone. You know, they're actually reasonably good quality, and the thing that I like about them too is you can see if things are in focus when, you know, filming. I know that sounds a little bit funny, but when you're talking to the camera, I'll try to use this phone now. One, because the audio is very good, but two, the picture's good enough and I can see what's happening, see if the recorder hasn't started, although you can see that too on the GoPros. But it just, yeah, it's handy and easy, and it's also gives you the option of 4K, 2.7K and HD. And I think that's, oh, and the drone, of course, the drone, the DJI Mavic Pro drone that I use. And that's just to help with transitions. I like to use the drone for filling, to add mood, to add perspective. It kind of lifts the footage, I find, and I could never go without a drone now. In terms of how much footage I take and what makes it into the editing studio, so to speak, or into the final product, it's like this upside down triangle. You start with this, you know, huge amount of information or data, and you're just sort of whittling it down to the final product. And I have hours and hours of footage, and I've got, I think most of the hunts I have 150 to 200 gigabytes of data or footage, which is just stupid, right? You're never going to use that. And then you whittle it down to something that's a lot more sort of specific with a story, and that's, so there's lots of content that I've still got, and maybe I can put together other clips later on with bits and bobs, but most of it that I take, I would say 30%, 20%, 25% of it probably makes the cut, which is unfortunate, but you know, there's a lot of information. I've got lots of different SD cards that I keep adding to capture footage, because for me, I want it to be authentic and reflect the true hunt. And there's lots of moments that you're capturing. I don't share all those moments though. Sometimes some of the moments are fairly personal that I just want to share with only immediate family or friends. Other moments haven't come across as well as you'd thought maybe, so you don't use it. And yeah, I think you can't, it doesn't hurt to have more and just filter it down for less. No, I think that'll do. Thanks, Aussie Hunting Life. Alright, next question. The Angry Fisherman. Hey mate, great channel. Thank you. Keen to know how many bullets you would take on a hunt, how much water you carry at one time, and is a spotting scope a must-have? Well, I've covered water, so I won't talk about water. The bullets, look, I take anywhere between 15 bullets in total. So I'll have 5 in the magazine, because it's a 5-shot magazine. I'll have 5 in the magazine once I'm in the hunting area, and 10 bullets in the holster in the original packaging. That's fairly common. Sometimes I've taken up to 20 bullets in total, which is way too many, right? But if I'm in open terrain where you've got big country to glass, like in the South Island, where some of your shots can be longer range, I've never needed a packet of ammo, but I've just had it there just in case. Or if I drop my scope or bang it and need to re-sight it, I take a few extra in. In saying that, I've also done hunts where I've taken only a 5-shot magazine and not used them all up either. So I think a sensible number of bullets though would be 10 to 12 bullets. It's enough to, if you knock your scope, to give a few shots. If you're in open country and you maybe miss some animals, or you're shooting at longer range, you've still got some up your sleeve, 10 to 12 should be ample. In terms of a spotting scope, depends what your purposes are. If you're a meat hunter, no, I don't think you need a spotting scope. If you're a trophy hunter and it's all about the trophy and the size, and you're very, very selective and you've got specific criteria, then yeah, you need a spotting scope. In terms of glassing though, and actually spotting animals, I don't reckon you need a spotting scope. I think you need a good pair of binoculars, and you need to learn how to glass properly and know what to look for. In most cases I can still spot animals out to long distances, but in saying that, I was very impressed on the October hunt with Andy when he got his Maven spotting scope out, and he spotted this group of deer at like 3 kilometres through the spotting scope exclusively. He was looking through the spotting scope onto this face that looked good and just spotted them, and I was amazed. Like, I was looking through my binos and struggling to pick them out because it was just, there was that much shimmer and that much haze, and his spotting scope did a great job in showing them. Arguably though, you got to question, okay, well that 3 kilometres was 3 kilometres as the bird flies, and about probably 5 kilometres as we dropped down and up. And we weren't going to get there in the time that we were in that country, and we had so much good country under our feet. So in that regard, having that spotting scope, being able to see animals on the other side, was just good information for the next trip. I think. So for sambar, do you need a spotting scope for sambar? Again, if you're trophy hunting and you really want to assess your animal, then take it in. I would definitely say if you're trophy hunting for chamois and tar and you really want to assess the horn length and really assess the curl, how much it comes up and over its ears, if you even want to count rings on its horns in terms of its age, and that's getting very detailed, you sort of have to be in close, but the good quality spotting scopes can do that these days, and I know people that count age rings on animals, experienced people. Then yeah, take a spotting scope. But for your general Joe Blow hunting, I don't think it's necessary. I've got spotting scopes, and most of the time I don't take them, especially not for sambar. I've never taken them for sambar. It's just been taken by others, which I'm more than happy for others to carry a spotting scope. When I've got that much gear already being carted around with the camera gear, I don't really have room for a spotting scope. Put it this way, if you've got a limited budget, then I would personally spend money in other areas than a spotting scope. But if you've got plenty of money, then a spotting scope, you'll certainly put it to good use. Next question, Jeremy. As someone who is wanting to start getting into backpack hunting, what are some of the essentials? Feel free to brand drop. And what are items that are nice but you can do without? Oh, right. I probably use way too many items that I could do without. I'll start with the first part of the question. So, what are essentials? Feel free to name drop. Well, essentials are polypropylene. That's your polypro layer, your sort of core layer, whether that's polypropylene or merino wool, either or, but you want a base layer. I reckon that's fundamental. Good Thorlo type socks, or socks that are going to be well insulated and keep your feet warm, and when they get wet hopefully can somehow let the moisture out and not get too heavy. I wouldn't get anything that's cotton, so cotton is an absolute no-go. Get rid of anything that's cotton. I don't care what brand it is, cotton can get burnt in a fire. I've got a story about cotton actually, which I'll just quickly, no actually I won't go there. I've got a story about cotton that I think I told on a podcast with Hunting a Ret, where Andre Alaparty saved my life from hypothermia in winter time during the Raw, and then again actually the following week chasing chamois in Arthur's Pass. So don't have cotton in your kit. Essentials, definitely boots. Boots, hands down, the most important thing you need. And then second would be binoculars. But boots, you want a good pair of boots. If you're going into alpine terrain, you want to have a good solid boot that's got like a 3/4 shank as a minimum. And if you're going to go mountaineering, you want a full shank so that you can really have stability when you're kicking into the slope and pushing up. You do not want a boot that's going to do this and kind of let your foot fold in half and you'll just slip onto your teeth. Good brands. I'm happy to talk about brands of boots because I've actually owned a lot of boots. I killed so many boots when I was at uni. I went through Scarpas. I went through 3 pairs of Scarpas, A Solos. I went through a pair of those. I went through La Sportivas. There's another brand too. Well, I went through a few Stony Creek brands. Any of those European boots, I reckon are good quality. You know, anything from Italy is good quality. Germany, anywhere in the European countries make good quality boots. And I always choose one that has got, I don't know what you call it, but it's like the black protective layer that goes around the toe of the boot, because when you're on screes, and this is particularly important in New Zealand, or if you're in America and you're going across screes in either Alaska or Colorado or anywhere where there's just that sort of fine rock, and even rock clusters that are, you know, bigger clusters, and you're moving down through boulder fields and lots of sharp rock, you want to have that protective layer that goes around the toe of your boot. The boot cops are flogging, and you want something that's going to be comfortable, so go in and try boots on. Don't buy those online. They're so expensive. You want to make sure you're investing in a boot that you're going to be happy to wear and not get blisters, and wear them in too. Go and like walk through a local stream, or put them on in your shower, get them totally wet, and just go for a walk through some local hills, or just wear them for a day wet. I don't think that's a problem. Just wear them wet. That was how we were taught how to wear boots, and it's always worked for me. Other things that are essentials: emergency beacon or some form of safety communication tool. I think is very important. If you can't afford a emergency beacon, and you're hunting in an area where another mate is, have two-way radios. I've just recently bought the Garmin InReach Explorer for that last hunt. Actually, I've hunted with it twice now, and I found that great. Just that security that you've got with having the ability to make an SOS or communicate with loved ones and other hunters is great. Good sleeping bag's important, and I would just get a good rating for the type of hunting that you're expecting to do. So if you're going to hunt for tahr in New Zealand, which is I guess the ultimate test on equipment, you'll want to get a -20 sleeping bag really, just to get you through hell on earth if your tent rips, or for whatever reason something happens at camp and your tent's been picked apart by keas, which can happen. Having a good rated sleeping bag just gives you confidence to come back to a warm night's sleep. I mean, in Australia, I would say, in Victoria and other parts of Australia, if you're hunting in the sort of hotter parts of the year, then you'll want to have gaiters for snakes. I know I'm not going anywhere in Australia without gaiters on. I even wear gaiters, religiously in winter time, even though I'm maybe unlikely to see a snake, but I'm not going to take any chances with snakes. First aid kit. You definitely need a first aid kit, and you definitely need to learn how to apply bandages if you're bitten by a snake. That concept of, if you've been bitten on the limb, you start from the exterior extent of your limb and you work your way up to your lymph node and back down to the exterior again, and you want to wrap it nice and tight. You want to have a good first aid kit, because if it goes to hell, yeah, don't be found wanting without a first aid kit. So that's an essential. Yeah, look, there's lots of things that you need, but those for me would be the essentials. Those would be game stoppers for me. I wouldn't progress on my backpack hunts unless I had those items in the bag. Thank you for that question, Jeremy. Oguzan Yond Emily? Oguzan Yondalimli. Oh, sorry mate, I hope I've got that right. I'm just going to call you Oguz. What handheld GPS do you use? Okay, so the GPS that I use is a Garmin. I've used 3 Garmins in my life since they came out with the Garmin E-Trex, like in 1995 or 96. But yeah, Garmin is a great GPS provider, and just recently I've changed to a Garmin InReach Explorer, and that's just for that communication function. I guess the key with using a GPS though is, if you want to be able to communicate between your Google Earth and your GPS, you want to make sure that you're setting your lat and long settings in the same unit. So thank you for that question. Matt Saunders, are rangefinders necessary for sambar? All of your videos seem as though it's see and shoot. Is it that quick that a rangefinder does not come into play? Well, I'm lucky in that I've got a rangefinder inbuilt into my Leica GeoVids, so the rangefinders are there to easily use, and I do use them. Don't use them when I'm bush hunting though, ever, basically. Even when I go to take a shot, if it's within 200 metres, which I can generally tell, I don't even bother taking a rangefinder on it. The only time I use the rangefinder is if I'm bow hunting, and I used to use my rangefinder all the time, but it used to be on the wrong side, because I'm right-handed, and I hold the bow with my left hand, and my rangefinder button was over on the other side where your left finger needs to get, so I'd always have to change hands to then get a range on the bow, which is extremely frustrating. So I've also got a Leica single-handed rangefinder just so that I can have it in my pocket and take a range. But that's because bow hunting, you really do need to know your ranges. I mean, the difference between 5 yards can be a missed animal or a wounded animal, so that's really important. If you're shooting long range or distances where you really want to make sure, if your rifle's zeroed for 100 and you're shooting to 350 or 320, having a rangefinder is important to give you that confidence to make an ethical kill. I mean, at the end of the day, all hunters need to be ethical in their or as ethical as they can be. Sometimes things will happen, but if we're faced with a situation where an animal's just too far, and for me, for instance, on that last hunt, 400 metres was too far, or 450, 500 yards was too far for me to want to take that shot, and in actual fact, I prefer to get in closer because one, it's more challenging, you can really test yourself, but two, you've got the confidence to make an ethical shot. So it is important if you're in open country, but if you're in close quarter stuff, definitely not. You don't need a rangefinder. Well folks, that brings us to an end of equipment. I'm going to stop it there. So thank you very much for watching, and sorry if I've laboured on.